Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another edition of Babbling Irons Transfer Roundup. Obviously, we've had a bit of a crazy week, but before we start there's something we should have done yesterday, which we didn't do, so we're going to do it now. And that is say congratulations to @Grey180. You won our competition. So thank you for everyone who entered. Apologies we didn't do this yesterday. We should have done it, but we got a bit excited because of Skamaka and everything that it kind of went out of our minds. So again, congratulations to Gray. I've already talked to you today. Your shirt should be on its way as of Monday. And I hope you enjoy it, mate. So without further ado, let's move on to the transfer chat. So we've had a number of players linked this week. We've had a familiar name in one of them coming back, and let's start this off with the links to Lozano and Terrier. So we'll obviously had links to both those. Laki have said about us looking at Terrier and there being complications, shall we say, Ren being difficult, which quite frankly is their right. We've just bought one of their players. We're asking now to take their second star player if this is a genuine link. It's one of those deals that could be fantastic for the club. After looking at today, we have lacked pace. And if we take a look at Terrier as well, he obviously has had a phenomenal season at Rennes. So I think it's 21 goals he scored over the course of the season. He has a lot of what we're looking for in terms of the ability to play out wide and has good pace. Again, he has good passing, creative player. And also he has an eye for goal, which is very much evident in the 21 goals that he's scored this season. So basically, really what I want to say is I personally think it's a great deal. It's one that I've been wanting for a very long time. But Sloth, what do you think our chances are of getting him? And also we've also been linked with another player, which we're just going to kind of flash up as well, in Lozano. So again, it's another player that we've been linked to, kind of plays either side as well. So kind of what do you think are our chances with either one of these? I personally think Lozano is not going to happen. I think it's possibly a bit like the Danjuma one, something presented by an agent because we're already speaking to Napoli. But yeah, what is your take on the kind of the wing options that we're looking at?
I think it's probably one of the most important positions for us to solve, apart from left back. So I think we need to really focus on bringing in quality there. I think Terrier is the far better option. He's the far better player of the two. It's just my opinion, really. I think you can point the finger and say, they're both quite inconsistent in terms of form over the course of seasons. But I think Terrier's just come on leaps and bounds, whereas Lozano's had a good season and then he's really dipped. And Terrier's hit double figures, I think, 2 other seasons as well. So it's not like he's just come from nowhere. He's a good quality player, but he's just excelled this year. And I think if we really want to capitalize on that, he is probably the best option we've got because he's a big player, but he's very quick and he's very hardworking. So I think for that left-hand side, it gives us a real versatility. We can have the creativity of someone like Ben Rama, Fornells, and then you've got the directness of Bowen, you've got the Terrier, and you've got Antonio and Skamaka, who are just going to run at players, they're going to cause havoc. And with that quality delivery that Terrier's got, you're going to be laughing.
Yeah, I certainly think as well with Terrier definitely suits if you have an aggressive and attacking fullback, which obviously we talked about yesterday with Kostic. That could be the case that if we switch to the formation we saw today, there could be quite an interesting proposition to have someone say as Terrier and also with Kostic on the other side. And also we linked with Lozano. As I say, I don't think this one will come about. I think this is more a link that's come about due to us being interested in another Napoli player that we'll talk about. But for those who don't know or not that aware of Lozano, how would you describe Lozano as a player?
He's a very pacey, very skillful winger, but he's, as I kind of alluded to, he's very inconsistent, and he can kind of fade in and out of games or just go completely absent for quite a few of them. But he has all the right attributes. He can make something happen out of nothing. The reason I am quite as hesitant as I am is because we've seen how players like that tend to get on at West Ham, and he's not the hardest worker. As I mean, not going to get back and really graft. So I think, I don't know. I think he would be a Di Maria in this league. He's got all the right kind of like ability, but just not the
fortitude. I guess probably the way of putting it.
Well, I think I really like Di Maria. I think he's a fantastic player. So it's not like a slight against that style of player, but I just think he wouldn't really work at West Ham because of how we're set up. And if you've got, he would be very lucky to have Soufal behind him, because he can bomb up and down that line, and Soufal can give him that support. But I just don't think he's very consistent, and that's the problem. If he's playing on the left-hand side and he's got Cresswell behind him, then I just see him getting exposed. And even if he's got Kostic behind him, I think he's, as I mentioned, he drifts in and out of games so much that I don't really know if he'd be that effective.
Yeah, I tend to agree. You know, he's quite diminutive as well in his stature, but he does have incredible pace. He does have an eye for goal. I believe it's 6 goals this year and about 4 or 5 assists, I think, this season. So, you know, he's always there amongst the goals in one way or another. But as you say, the inconsistency is something that's maybe been labelled at, say, Benrahma, which is one of the problems that we have. And you kind of look as to, well, are we going to go spend big on a left winger? I think today, again, also highlighted the problems we have down that left-hand side. You know, whilst Benrahma's comfortable and tidy in possession, at the moment, for me, he seems slightly shackled still. I think that he's not the street player that he was at Brentford. I think that's because he is so determined to do what he's been asked tactically that sometimes he plays, not necessarily plays within himself, but I don't think he completely expresses himself as he would with the tricks and the flicks that he would. Sometimes we see that, but I think that's in games where we are flowing, and I think he suits when that intensity is pretty quick in the final third. When it's a bit slower, a bit pensive, I think he's not necessarily that player that's going to light things up. Maybe moving him centrally could be the answer to maybe unlocking him and getting a left winger which has that pace and looks to get him behind. But obviously, my own family on the court, I'd love to see Terrier. Obviously, we kind of briefly mentioned him yesterday, like Gakpo as well, for that left-hand side. You know, I do think we need a greater goal threat, which is, again, sounds crazy considering how many goals Benrahma did get last season. But I do think we need that, again, it's that variation of player. And I think what we are lacking is that ability to penetrate with pace. I definitely think that's something that we don't really have, and we can get that in that left-hand side. Again, gives us more. I think we can also be a bit more fluid if we have someone like a Terrier who does like to get involved, does like to utilise the space left by the strikers. So when Antonio drifts wide, Terrier is going to go inside. It's just part of his game. He cannot stand in someone else's space. He will move. Also, we see with some players, they don't necessarily do that. They do tend to kind of stand in the same space because it's, well, I'm playing in this position. We're going to make triangles. Terrier is a bit like Bowen in the sense of, I will do that to a point, but my focus is I need to get somewhere where I can impact, and that's being essentially sometimes in the bounds of that 18-yard area, which he tends to do. So I think it's a position that we definitely need. I think the problem is at the moment that I don't think we've seen our intent as yet as to how we want to address that side. We've seen the links with Dennis, we've seen the links with also Dwight McNeil, Sarr. So, when you look at what we're going for, it does seem that we're maybe some ways looking for a cheaper option. But in others, again, we're linked to players like Terrier, who aren't going to be cheap. Lozano, again, probably a player that isn't going to be cheap, regardless of whether I think it's going to happen or not. So I think we're a bit in a catch-22. I think it's one of those, it's the nice-to-have position at the moment, whereas I think for me, I think it's possibly more pressing than the attacking midfield position. But I don't think the club share that opinion at this point. So if you was to choose at the moment for a left wing role, would you be going for one of these two, or would you be looking elsewhere?
I think it depends on the price. If we're talking 40 million euros, the only one I would feel comfortable spending that on is Terrier. But I do really like Gakpo. I think it would be really good because obviously him and Scamacca know each other.
Yeah, as we discussed yesterday.
So that is a really good potential move. And I do think he's another one. He offers us 6 foot plus. Like, he offers us that physicality that Moyes is known for. But personally, I'd probably spend the 40 million on Terrier. I wouldn't touch Lozano or the other Napoli player we're going to talk about with the fee that is being mentioned. But it all kind of depends, because if you could get Gakpo for 25 million, and that means you can definitely get Onana, then I'd probably be tempted to just move on to Gakpo and get Onana. So
I think Gakpo as well. I think he's rumored at around 35 million euros. I think around that mark. I think that's what's been quoted. So again, it's another big deal we'd have to put down.
Yeah, but let's face it. I think you could probably get him for 25 million and add-ons. You could take it to that point. And if you're putting that extra 10 million pounds towards Onana, then personally, I think you're going to get a lot more in terms of overall quality in the squad. But I would much rather spend a large sum like that on Terrier than I would Lozano. So it's all kind of, I'm happy with it with any quality additional.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's a luxury to have.
I definitely think we someone like Terrier, obviously it's going to be difficult because we have already given Ren a good pay packet. But again, that might also mean we have a good relationship, even though if you go by what's in a key, it sounds like there is maybe a little bit of an estranged conversation at the moment, which again, it's their player. They do not want to sell him. We've already taken their star centre back. Of course, they're not going to want to give us their star left winger.
Let's also face it. I mean, if you're dealing with David Sullivan, every
well, he can never look you straight in the eye unless he's on a footstool. So
it'd be strange, isn't it? So
exactly. And I do think that if we are sensible, there are in such as with Terrier or even Gakpo, we've talked around that there is maybe a structure like we've done with Scamacca is possible. I don't think as a club we should be scared about a sell-on clause. It's not great. But I think when you're looking at these young talents, sometimes you have to acknowledge the fact that you may be a stepping stone, which again isn't a bad problem. I've never had a problem with being a stepping stone, because if you get 2 or 3 years out of them and their value skyrockets, yes, you're paying someone else, but they were involved in their early development. Fine, give them that money for that early development. You're actually benefited the most off of that development they've done. So it's a nice, there you go. We'll take the major profit and then we'll go and buy the next level of player. So I don't see a problem with a sell-on clause. I don't see a problem as a stepping stone. And I think for players like a Gakpo, even probably not as much as a Terrier now, as he's 25. So unless he has 2 very strong seasons, I don't necessarily see a top team then coming in for him. So he's probably more, we would be a club that he'd be out for next 3-4 years or something. But again, I think there are structures we can do similar to what we've done with Scamacca that could bring them in. And I think, as you say, it's really important that we look at top quality players, if they're going to be in for our first team, if they're going to be part of our more rotation, then I think we're right to look at players like Sarr. And whilst I'm not a massive fan of his, someone like Dennis, for instance, I think that's where I lie. But I would rather we went in for, say, a Terrier and Gakpo. They would be my choices. I don't think Lozano is someone we should be looking at. But again, I think that probably is a good segue into the other Napoli player that we've kind of been referring to. So it's been said that he's been looked at as a Lingard alternative. So Zieliński obviously plays for Napoli, plays pretty much anywhere in midfield. He's played a bit of right midfield, centre midfield, attacking midfield as well. Pretty much a two-footed player. He has a thunderbolt of a shot with his left foot from going back and reviewing. Again, it's nice to see that he's got 2 feet. He has decent pace. I wouldn't say great pace. I think I'd probably say on par with, say, Vlasic, if I was to kind of measure it. But it's another one where you think, well, it's a 28-year-old player. We're offering maybe 38 million euros, I think was the rumoured, or at least the value that's been put on his head. It does feel excessive to me. He is a good player from what I've seen. He's good in possession, good passing and so on. And I will just flash up just some info on him for people as well, just so they can kind of see what we're referring to. But, as you can see, in possession, he is very strong. He's, in the upper kind of 70 percentile for quite a large section of his passing and his accuracy and so on. So he is a player that I think, besides Fornals, has that ability to pass between the lines a lot more. But defensively, won't offer us very much. He's quite weak in his defending, I would say. Attacking wise, again, he gets involved. He seems a bit of a predator in the box. At times likes to hang back, and when he gets a chance to shoot, he will shoot, and he will do it with a fair bit of ferocity, especially with his left. Now, they all sound like a massively glowing reference, but I personally don't think it is the right deal for the club. What are your thoughts?
I think it's a stupid price. Like, if you were picking him up for €1 million, I'd be like, yeah, that's a great deal. Anything over 30, it's just stupid money for me. He's a very good player on his day. Yeah. And the problem is that people are going, oh yeah, they're looking at the stats from this season where he has been great. Mm-hmm. But
again, I think 10 goals and assists, I think, this season as well. So again, as you say, if you look at statistically this season, brilliant. Yeah. Real strong metrics. So each makes you go, it's a player to stand up and kind of look at. But I'm going to say a player that I know you love. It's a player that I definitely love as well. And for me, I think if we're £38 million to spend on an attacking midfielder, and also Moyes likes players who are flexible, I don't see why we don't go really ambitious. We'll get probably turned down straight away, but why not try for someone like Szoboszlai? He can play centre midfield, attacking midfield, left wing. Real Sociedad were rumoured to be very close, and they're only in Europa League. Again, San Sebastian, brilliant, beautiful place as part of Spain. But again, I can't imagine they would be able to offer more wages than we could. I also don't imagine they were offering particularly anywhere near £38 million to purchase him as well. So why should we not maybe be ambitious and maybe overstep our bounds, as some people would probably suggest? And why should we not go for someone like Szoboszlai? Surely that's a stronger, more exciting acquisition within the construct of our team.
Well, that's the rumoured replacement that Napoli are going to go for.
Yes.
So I just don't really get why we would go for Zieliński when you could get Szoboszlai for about the same money, and you're getting a younger player with a ton of potential who's excellent on set pieces. And
set pieces are insane. They are incredible.
Zieliński is good, but his set pieces are fantastic. Again, he's another 6 foot plus player. He's great with both feet, but he carries the ball well. He's quick. Like, it's just a case of I don't really get why we would be looking at this kind of target as opposed to, say, Ludovic Blas or Kamada.
Yeah.
Two players are probably going to cost you 38 million. Like, for two players, you could probably go out and get Blas and potentially Kawadi Kone from Gladbach, and you've got a box-to-box midfielder there, and Kamada's in the last year of his contract. Blas has been rumoured to be about 15 million. You're laughing. It's a case of I don't get why we would be looking to spend that sort of money on the player. It's not that he's a bad player; he's a good player, but it's just the wrong target, for my opinion. And when you're talking about changing the structure or the kind of idea in recruitment for the club, I don't get bringing in a 28-year-old for 38 million euros over a whole bunch of attacking options. You could probably go out. You could get Kamada. You could get Jean Onana off Bordeaux.
Yep.
And you could get another player for 38 million euros. It just doesn't really make sense to me, this link. And while I think, it's a player who will add something, if you're spending 38 million euros, why not just put that towards Onana? If you know Moyes really wants him and he's already missed out on Brozier.
Apparently, this is a separate to Onana. So apparently Onana will still happen. And this is an addition too. So maybe there was always, the budget was there if needed, should, say, Lingard not come in.
If that's the case, I honestly think you'd be better off buying the players that I mentioned. Because if you're already going to get Onana, fantastic. But then you can add another centre mid. You can add another centre attacking mid. And someone like Blas is more than comfortable playing right midfield, more than comfortable playing left midfield, but can play in the centre in that role that we think Lanzini can, and offer you just as much.
Yes, I think Zieliński's been bought because of his flexibility as well, because he has played obviously a defensive midfield, attacking midfield, centre midfield, right midfield as well this season. But he's primarily been looked at for that versatility as opposed to maybe what else you can get in the market. Obviously, we know we've obviously talked to Blas before. One of my favourites, Coop Miners, is another one that you would think for the same price and same amount of money. He's probably, I would suggest, more consistent than Zieliński. He's younger, Dutch international. Again, can play for the entire spine of your team. Apart from centre forward, he plays the entire spine, and again can score goals. Set piece taker, takes a brilliant penalty. He can sit in that midfield role. He can play as an attacking midfielder. So I do feel that maybe some of our focus is a little off now. Obviously, that's, again, our personal preferences are suggesting other players because that's our personal preference. But again, I also think that from a long-term point of view, looking at a younger profile or a younger player that has been performing consistently is a better option. And Szoboszlai obviously is the darling of Hungary. He is an incredible footballer, as we said, can play pretty much anywhere in midfield. Coop Miners is another. Again, Blas, we're talking about inexpensive players. Blas is very much the same. You have Kamada again, who can play that role. I do feel that maybe we're possibly needing to look elsewhere. And the link to Zieliński for me doesn't feel right. And the main thing that me and you have said a long time is we lack pace. And looking at players that have pace, which admittedly that means Coop Miners is slightly out because he's not pacey, but someone like Szoboszlai does have pace. Kamada has pace. Blas is not electric, but again he has good pace and can cover ground. So do feel that we are potentially looking at someone that is comfortable in positions, can pass well, but maybe just isn't quite what we need, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, I just think it's. I think he's a good player. I think it's a poor way to spend money, and it's not like our recruitment's been terrible. Like when we do low cost signings, sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. But you can get low cost signings like the General in Balbuena, and they can do well. But I think there's so many options, better ways to spend that money than I think 38 million euros on a 28-year-old who, in my opinion, has had one great season, but might not have another great season for 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, I do think the options we've said that you buy them, I think each one of them is going to increase in value. With a good season behind them, they're going to increase in value at least by maybe 10 to 20 million. And I know that sounds excessive, even if we're paying 38 million, but we've got to understand that if it suits someone like Szoboszlai or even Coop Miners, they're very good players, they're already well respected. They will go higher. Again, Blas is another one you buy for 15. Again, it makes a big difference. But John asked a question. I know what my answer is, but Ricky Pooch, he be a player that you consider is maybe someone we should look at, with obviously him in for sale at Barca?
At least we could pay his bloody wages. Like, I mean, it's I don't know. Like, obviously, I think he's a great player.
Yeah.
A lot of the problem I kind of worry about with Barcelona of late is just they know when to sell, and if there's a reason that a player's up for sale, it's generally because they know that the player's not really going to cut it. And we had this discussion about Traore the other week. Very good in some aspects, but I think can be found out. And I think with Puig or Puig, I think he can.
Puig, yeah. Ricky Pooch.
Ricky, yeah.
It's an unusual way of saying it, but yeah, it's apparently how you say it.
But he's just one for me that I think could be found out in the Premier League.
Yeah.
And I think he's got fantastic ability, but it's a very different game to come to the Premier League as a youngster and have John McGinn 2-foot you in the first 5 minutes than it is to play for Barcelona, and you generally go to games and you're the favourite. So I think he's a great talent, but for West Ham, I think he's probably not the one I look at, which seems like a crazy statement, but I just think there's probably.
I would agree. We had Mike's point up there about the Luton game showing about obviously our attacking options not necessarily kind of cutting it. I do think that when we take off Fornals, we lack someone who can make those passes. I think he's the one that has the vision that can pass through the lines and can actually play those through passes. I think elsewhere we're kind of lacking. Ben Rom, when he plays centre, can do it, but again today didn't look as if But again, as a whole team, I think we played at a very low tempo, and I don't think that's necessarily conducive for some of the team. And obviously the Ricky Pooch point, I think he's a very talented football player. When he came through, there was elements very reminiscent of David Silva in the kind of way he moved, the way he passed. But ultimately, I think, again, he's a player that enjoys a lifestyle. And I think that's part of his problem why he's never really taken off at Barcelona. He has deserved a chance, but I think he's also been a little bit self-destructive. And I think, to be honest, as good as Pooch is, it's a player that's not going to go down well with David Moyes. So I would say very good, technically brilliant player, but he's someone that would suit maybe going to, say, another La Liga team or going somewhere like Syria. I don't think he's going to be a player that would excel in the Premier League, because I question some of his mentality. But yeah, I think, in midfield, I think we can concede that there is a lack of creativity. Especially if you take off Fornals. We've mentioned it before. Lanzini's very good at knitting play together, but he's lacking that penetration. There was also a point made, I think, on Twitter today of someone hearing Moyes shout to Lanzini, "You need to run into the space, not stand there." It's things like that, which is why I've always said that as much as I like Lanzini, how much I've liked him in the past, he is the player for me that if we are going to move someone on, we move on. Just because I don't think he is that player that's going to create in that final third, and that's what we need. We need a creator in that final third. But let's just park that on the midfielders. There's a point made about, do we need to sign a general in defence? We can maybe touch on that if we have time. But next one, and the next kind of player that we've been linked to this week, is the young Luke Thomas, who is obviously at Leicester City. Apparently rumoured to be available for around £20 million, which isn't very much. But obviously, as we're kind of been made aware, Leicester are probably in a position where maybe they need to sell players before they can go out and buy at the moment, which is a surprise considering how well their business and how good their business has been over recent years. Now, obviously, Luke Thomas isn't necessarily that well thought of either at Leicester. He did play about 41 games last season, I think, and he's an under-21 international, so there's clearly talent. But I wouldn't say it's a target that maybe goes straight into the team. It's someone that I'd probably say is a bit like with Hickey, in that it's a player that has potential. It's a player that plays well in flashes, but it's not a player that I would necessarily be convinced can, at this point, take us to where we want to. Now, I know that sounds stupid because he played at Leicester, and Leicester are a good team. They've played in Europe last season. But I do feel that when you kind of watch him, he's crossing again. He's a bit inconsistent. He does make some good crossing. He's defending again. It's a bit inconsistent, but he's young. I guess that is the other thing we need to remember. He's 21. He can develop. But is it 20 million? Is that a price too high for him, or is it a gamble worth taking?
I think there's better ways to spend the money. He's got a high ceiling, and I think if you were bringing him in to integrate him in and test the water, then yeah, but we don't need that. We need a player who is going to push Cresswell and push to take the spot, and I don't think he's that. If you're looking at £20 million as well, then why not shoot for the stars? Why not go for Samakis? Bid 20 million for Samakis. And though he's at Liverpool, which fantastic club, but if we said, well, you're going to fight to be our long-term left back, what's he going to say? Because he's not played much football this year.
No, exactly. By all accounts, he's quite well liked at Liverpool, and I think Klopp quite likes him. He's obviously been a cup player, but again, as you say, why not go for it? John made a good point. Again, sorry if I just bring this up. He did also say about personally targeting Bard. It's a player that I quite like. My only reservation is that he's very similar to Cresswell in the sense of he's not necessarily that adventurous as a left back. He's a defender first kind of left back, and we've kind of already expressed that that's one of our concerns down at left-hand side. We don't necessarily have one that is very kind of maybe forward-thinking. Obviously, had we probably not gone for Aguerd, if we're not potentially looking at Terrier, then Truffaut, also at Rennes, is a good solid left back. He does kind of both pieces. I do feel we have missed out with the likes of Malacia. That was a player that I do believe we should have been signing and should have been moving for earlier. That was a player that I wanted for a long time. But again, we moved a bit too slow. And I think once United came in and Ten Hag obviously been at United, I think that was always a losing battle for us, unfortunately. So I think we're probably both agreed that Thomas, whilst it's an intriguing proposition, as at £20 million, it's probably a price point that's probably a bit too high. And as you say, there are other fullbacks as well out there. Obviously, Grimaldo is another one. Not again necessarily. There are. I think that at the moment, when I look at left backs, I see a lot of trade-offs with any of them, and they're either very good going forward and then suspect defending, or they're strong defensively but don't offer much going forward. So I think this is probably our hardest pick of a position. Obviously, we're going for Kostic at the moment, who we're going to assume is going to be really for an alternate left winger and a left wing back. We both have our reservations on the left winger aspect of that. And obviously, as a left winger, we know he will be quality if he can settle in the league. But from a left back point of view, who would you be aiming for, and why would you go for that player? Even.
I think. I mean, I did a tweet the other day and I listed a few options, and I think Monaco have got a great pair of left backs, but I'd probably be looking at someone like Terrier, and you just kind of mentioned that he's more defensive minded. Then, sorry, was it Terrier or Bard?
Bard is the more defensive one, yeah.
Bard. He's probably the one that I'd go for, to be honest.
So I'm going to throw a curveball. So Leipzig are about to sign Rom, which then means that there's going to be a certain left back who is technically a homegrown player, played for Man City, played for Ajax. Would you be interested, or would you look at Angelino, who is, again, very good going forward? It's not bad defensively. Is he someone that you would maybe look at to capitalise on the fact that he's potentially losing his spot at RB Leipzig?
I don't really think we have a chance, to be honest. Like, I don't. I think he is very good going forward, but over the course of a Premier League season, I think he could well be trouble. He is pretty good in defence with his pace, and he reads the game quite well, but I think he just gets found out. I think he can. His decision making isn't always good, and I think for the amount of money it would probably take, the amount of wages he'd probably want, I'd just avoid it. I think if you're looking at probably spending a bit that sort of money, again, Zieliński is if he was interested to come, I think he's a far better option. He can do the attacking, but he's also sound defensively. And yeah, we've missed out on quite a lot of the options that that were available. If we do want someone, again, I mentioned the other night, Levi Colwell. I think he's got the ability to play left back. He normally plays left centre back, but he's got the pace, and he's already got the defensive mindset. So it would be a case of working on the attacking side of things. But I just kind of think that there's a whole host of options out there. Unfortunately, we've missed the ship on quite a few of them. I think Bassi would have been my top pick because he gives you physicality and size as well, on top of the ability to bomb forward. In terms of the attacking aspect of things, I think that's a lot easier to coach than being a good defender. I trust a good defender to be able to improve in attacking a lot more than I do someone who is, Masuaku. Like, I trust someone to be able to defend. And I think, it's just a case of us getting the right person in. I think personally, if you're going to spend £20 million, look elsewhere. And I wouldn't touch Angelino, because I think he's a bit of a he's a left wing back. He's not a left back. Like if anyone's ever seen him play, he bombs up and down the line. But when he gets back and he bombs back, then
it's not the same conviction when he's coming back. Yeah.
No. So yeah,
I agree with you. Samakis, I think, is probably a sensible choice. We both, I believe, called him out way back when, before we even started this channel, and about a year before he even went to Liverpool. And both of us were saying that it's probably a player to look at and to go for. And then, lo and behold, Liverpool, with their smart recruitment, go and kind of take him. Again, I agree. He probably is, of the left backs, one of the ones that are worth it. I never really think about him, purely because, again, he's at Liverpool. Don't necessarily see him leaving, unfortunately. But Bard, I think, would be a solid option. As you say, you can coach that attacking aspects into their game. He is a very good defender, and I just love the fact that we could have a Frenchman called Melvin. That would just be amazing, to be honest. But yeah, we've kind of gone through some kind of topics quite quickly, but there's a couple of things I just kind of wanted to touch on, from the comments as well. One of them being, do we need a general in defence? I think we saw today, obviously Aguerd was injured. Zuma at times didn't look necessarily that comfortable in the middle of a three. And we also had to play two fullbacks as centre-backs. Obviously, Diop, I think, is likely to be gone. He's not played the last two games, so we clearly not want him to get injured, therefore not playing him. Dawson, his injury for a minor injury, has been out for the last two games, so maybe it's a little bit more severe than what we've been led to believe. And Ogbonna, I still believe, will be a long way away from being in a true match fitness. He played for the under-21s the other night, as opposed to playing in this game. So I think that suggests where his level of fitness is and competitiveness at the moment. My personal view, and I'll come on to yours in a minute, Sloth. Sorry to take up all the airtime on that. But I do think that we have that already in Aguerd. I do think he is a leader at the back. I do think when he is there and he starts to form that relationship with Zuma, he will take on that kind of general role, that kind of communicator. And also, I think if he does come in as the first team goalkeeper as well in Areola, I think he will also help enforce that, help to bring that out of our defenders, that organisation. And I think Aguerd is going to be the answer. But what are your thoughts? Do you feel that we need a kind of another defender, like more of a general, more of a leader at the back? Is that what you think we need?
I've always kind of said I would get another centre-back in, if not just because if you look at how we pick up injuries, and we've got Zuma, who's got a history of knee injuries. So although obviously I'm not saying he will get injured, it's just cover your arse. Like, if you've got two older players in Ogbonna and Dawson, who, let's face it, they've picked up knocks already, cover against it. We've got loads of games this year. Like, I know it's a lot of centre backs, but it's a big season, and as well, they will understand. You've given Ogbonna a year's extra extension, and if you said to him, "Look, we understand. Like, we want you here for the year," he's there is no way on earth he thinks he's first choice.
No,
let's just put that to bed. There is no way on earth he thinks he's first choice, and I don't mean that as anything of a comment against ability.
It's just the reality of the situation.
Yeah. So therefore, you've got to look at it and go, well, Diop's not really good enough. I think he's just lost his confidence. He needs a move. So Diop's not good enough. Dawson, I really was impressed with him last year. I'll hold my hands up and say, massively exceeded my expectations. Again, over 30, is picking up knocks, and just guard against any sort of doubt. So if you're getting 20 million for Diop, go out and get someone like Ndika. Go out and I know he's got Champions League football, but
Ndika's also in the last year of his contract at Frankfurt. So there is that availability, shall we say, with Ndika.
There's a lot of good options out there to cover your backside. As I mentioned, Levi Colwill, if you want to bring someone in who's going to be a long-term replacement, then he's a good option to have. So it's not like there's a shortage of centre-backs out there. There's a lot of ability. I've said all along with Calvin Bassey, he gives you the ability to do that. You need players who can give you that, especially in this kind of season. But when you have centre-backs who are injury-prone, you need to recruit. You need to recruit against that possibility. So, yeah, I would buy an extra defender. And I know people will go, well, I don't care. Like, I don't care if 2 months down the line, Ogbonna does his knee again, you're all going to be going, why didn't we get a centre-back? Or if Zuma...
Or why did we sell Alessi? There's going to be those conversations. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And it's just a case of... I sent into our Babbling Irons group chat earlier, the sheer depth that Arsenal have in the centre mid, whether it's attacking mid, defensive mid, or central mid, the depth they have is unreal. And people are going, oh, well, why do we need 5 centre-backs? Or, like, do you think a top club cares? Do you think a club like Liverpool, when they've got, like, the likes of Van Dijk, Matip, they've got Konate, they've got Gomez.
Oh, yeah.
Like,
even when you look at their midfield as well, and they're apparently looking at Jude Bellingham and I think it's Matthias, who's the centre midfield at Sporting. So again, they've got probably 6 options in there. That's why I think the Liverpool being linked to Lille is more fancy talk from Lille. I do not believe there's any genuine interest whatsoever. They're trying to utilise a big name in Europe to drive up the price and to give a sense of urgency to us. I think we just stand firm, to be honest. I don't think Liverpool are in for Onana, and I would stand firm there. With regards to our defence, I agree, Colwill. I think if there is a player to go on offer, he could be that. I think Tuchel at the moment is saying no one is available. He wants everyone. But I don't think he really cares at the minute. I think it's more he's doing a political game, and we'll see certain players will move before the end of the season. Before the end of the window. Colwill, I think, would be a great addition that me and you would go for. I don't anticipate Moyes would. I think Moyes prefers, when he talks about a young defender, I think he views a young defender as a 24, 25-year-old. I think he prefers a more experienced player, even though Colwill, I think, has had the last 2 seasons out on loan and done quite well. I still think he'll look at that and go, he's about 20, 21 years old, that he's too young to invest in, which is a shame because, again, defenders get better with age, and if you get them young, then they can really develop quickly. So
there's a ton of options out there. I mentioned him again yesterday, Kiki Kouyate, another 6'4", 2-footed centre back, and he's just been relegated with Metz. Now, that doesn't tell the story. If you're going off that, then you should immediately write off Tarkowski. You should write off all the players that we hear time and time again would be good additions. But, fairly young and absolutely massive player, uses both feet, good range of passing, quite quick, and a threat from set pieces. So there's options out there. I do think we need a general, but I just think we need to be smart about it. And there's so many options out there that if we don't bring in someone, I'll be really surprised.
Yeah, and I think it's already been said, hasn't it, that should we sell Diop, which I think is on the cards, judging by the fact he's not been in the last 2 games and he's not injured. Also pictured in Miami, I think it was, or he put up a picture of him in Miami. So I think it's fair to say that he's potentially in a location where he can go to his next team very quickly. again, I agree. I think Diop is another player that could have been good for us, but he lost his confidence. If you look at him in that first season, he was an absolute brick wall of a defender and was incredible. But he lost his confidence, lost his way, and he's never got it back since, which is unfortunate, but it's what happens. I do think we already do have the general in our defence. I do think when Aguerd comes back, he is that player who's going to tie it all together. But again, we do need to address the left-back position to help that certainty in defence. I think we need to be very clear very quickly as to who's going to be our number one goalkeeper as well. I think it's probably has been made clear to the team, but I think that will also help that cohesion there. And, whilst we look at the latest ones, the links that we've discussed today, of those, I think Terrier is the only real one that we should be moving forward for, I do believe. The other players are, whilst good players, I don't think give enough diversity to what we currently have or are a significant increase or even value for money for what we need. Sorry, bit of a downer today when we talk about the ones, but let's talk about a positive. Scamacca was obviously still, it looks like it's going to be done. Hopefully he'll be flying over this weekend for the medical. So hopefully by Monday that will be announced. Kostic talks are also going very well, apparently, according to all of the kind of ITKs. So again, that's another positive. So whilst the set of players are maybe not what me and Sloth would get excited about and think are going to be great additions, we do have two players coming in that we do agree on that are going to be an interesting acquisitions and players for us next season. So on that, one last thing, make sure you follow us on Twitter if you're not already. So again, we'll just put up our Twitter handle. If you like this video, please do please do subscribe. I'm actually going to remember to say this because we don't have Frankie anymore, who does all of this for us normally. So again, get well soon, Frankie. Rest up well, mate. And it is now time for the last gesture of the evening. So, come on, you Irons.